There will be destruction. That's a message from officials in Auckland. They're warning of widespread damage to houses, trees and power lines, urging Aucklanders to make a plan and be ready to leave their homes. Jacob Johnson has more. Destruction. That's a message from officials in Auckland. They're warning of widespread damage to houses, trees and power lines, urging Aucklanders to make a plan and be ready to leave their homes. Jacob Johnson has more.
Final preparations underway. These Defence Force trucks stocked with stretchers and other essentials bound for evacuation centres across the city. The Emergency Coordination Centre also busy. Staff monitoring the cyclone's movements and organising last-minute logistics. The Mayor dropping in for a visit.
Be prepared and have a plan. Take it seriously. We are. You can see what everybody's dead busy in here preparing, and I think that's essential.
Aucklanders were scooping up the last of the sandbag supplies at this station today to fortify their homes.
Well, as the cyclone gets closer, many here at this West Auckland sandbagging station say it feels like Groundhog Day. Some of them live in areas hit hard by the floods 2 weeks ago, and they're worried about what this storm could bring.
The water was knee deep, but never know what's going to happen in the next 2 days.
With the creek behind us burst the banks and was pretty much up against our back fence.
Further north, kite surfers in Orewa were taking advantage of the swells. But the message is, stay away from the water.
This is the entree, okay? Even if we had not seen the flooding Friday 27th, the rainfall forecast numbers are high. They're above warning amounts for Auckland, and the wind gusts that are forecast for Auckland are top end.
The Prime Minister meeting with transport officials today, with Aucklanders advised to stay off the roads if possible.
My main message to people across the country is to take the severe weather warning seriously and to make sure that you're prepared and to follow the guidance that's being issued locally.
There are concerns many parts of Auckland are still vulnerable as the flood recovery continues.
There will be destruction from the cyclone.
We can expect to see with these winds things like trees coming down on power lines, further blockages to roads. There is also that additional complication of coastal erosion being caused by those coastal surges.
Auckland on high alert as the cyclone rolls in.
I'll bring in Jacob. Jacob, there's one thing many parents and caregivers are wanting an update on is, will schools be open tomorrow?
Kia ora, Melissa. Well, at this stage, it's up to each school or early learning centre to make the call about whether they want to open or to close tomorrow. But we are hearing that the Secretary of Education may make the order to close all schools across Auckland tomorrow and on Tuesday, like she did 2 weeks ago. Now, we're expecting an update from the Ministry of Education very, very shortly on that. For now, the advice is to go through your usual school channels to get an update on that, whether that's through social media or through emails. But considering the situation, it's also worth thinking about transport if you're travelling around Auckland tomorrow. The Harbour Bridge behind me has been closed until further notice because of high winds, and with the worst of the storm expected here tomorrow and on Tuesday, it could get much worse.
Thanks, Jacob. And all the latest information will be on our website, onenews.co.nz. Cyclone Gabriella is also causing havoc for travellers. Corazon Miller is at Auckland Airport for us tonight. Corazon, what can you tell us?
Well, it's mostly business as usual here at Auckland Airport this evening, but that's all about to change from tomorrow. Air New Zealand has announced that it's cancelling all its domestic flights in and out of the city from 5 a.m. tomorrow morning through till at least midday on Tuesday. There are still 4 international long-haul flights that are coming here into Auckland, but if those winds prove too strong when they try to come into land, those flights will have to be diverted. And because New Zealand's airports simply don't have enough capacity to take in all the flights that may need to be diverted, Air New Zealand has made that call to cancel all its international flights through till at least midday Tuesday too. It has been a difficult decision, but its Chief Executive Greg Forrest says it's about putting safety first.
If we can get open and, around close of play Tuesday, then hopefully in a week or so we should be able to get everyone where they needed to get to.
And look, it's not just Air New Zealand that's making this difficult call to cancel flights. We've seen Fiji Airways, American Airlines and also Qantas cancel a number of flights that were scheduled for tomorrow. Airport authorities have told us that they expect more flights could also follow, as this is a rapidly evolving situation. Things are changing every minute, every hour. And so anyone who is due to fly in the coming days, it's probably best to check your flight status before travelling out to the airport.
Ngā mihi nui. Thanks, Corazon. Brace yourselves for an unprecedented and dangerous weather event. That's the official word from the government as Cyclone Gabriella begins to make its presence felt. The Upper North Island and the East Coast are now covered in red alerts. That's the highest possible weather warning, with severe gales, heavy rain and large waves forecast. There has been surface flooding and power outages, but it's later tonight and into tomorrow and Tuesday that Gabrielle is expected to deliver its most destructive blows, with Coromandel Peninsula right in the firing line. We've got reporters across the Upper North Island covering the storm, but we'll start with Lauren Hendrickson in Northland, where wild winds have left thousands of properties without power and a state of emergency has been declared.
Yes, that's right, Laura. As of 4:30 this afternoon, a 7-day state of emergency was declared as a precautionary measure for Cyclone Gabrielle. Now, this is the second state of emergency for Northland in less than 6 weeks. And while heavy rain and strong winds are already battering the region, Civil Defence warns the worst of this weather is yet to come, with the key times of concern overnight tonight and tomorrow. A Sunday wake-up call for the Bay of Islands.
Holy
where Gabrielle was not afraid to make herself known.
Starting to get pretty wild now.
In Cape Reinga, wind gusts of 140 kilometres per hour were recorded. In Whangare, crews worked around the clock to stop surface flooding, picking debris off the road and cleaning out cesspits.
Trying to keep them clear, ready for the main event.
In Tutukaka, local businesses were doing their best to support the community.
We're just kind of here for moral support for the people that are around here. There's a bit of anxiety around the coast.
Anxiety because this area is vulnerable to road closures and is prone to being cut off, with the harbour already spilling onto the road at high tide today.
Normally I'd say, no, we're fine, but in the last couple of years, we know that we're not fine in these conditions.
Resident and Dive Tutukaka owner Kate Malcolm says the marina here is extremely exposed to the conditions.
That sustained pressure from the high winds on boats and lines, you're just kind of expecting something to ping.
Shortly after this interview, a boat on a mooring came loose in Ko Wharewa Bay and was headed towards other vessels in the marina. But thanks to quick work from locals, it was secured. At 3:30 this afternoon, at least 4,500 homes were without power in Northland, with outages spread right across the region. In Matapori, work was underway to fix downed lines after a tree toppled nearby.
There is a lot of power outages, trees falling on the lines, breaking the lines. North Power, I know, are out there trying to do their job, but they can't do it if people are out there driving on the roads.
Northland has been upgraded to a red rain and wind warning. Here in Matapori, wind gusts of 115 kilometres an hour have already been recorded, with easterly swells rising to 7 metres. 87-year-old Ken Wise lives here on his own. His lawn has flooded before.
Yeah, can't really change things for myself, so what happens, happens.
Residents now playing the waiting game as Gabrielle begins to pass through.
Lauren, you're at the Brindewin Hills where the road has been closed again.
Yes, that's right, Laura. State Highway 1 behind me between Brindewin and Waipu is actually being closed as we speak due to a large slip. This is a key route for Northlanders. It had only just reopened but will now remain closed until further notice. So too will State Highway 1 through the Mangamuka Gorge, and on top of several other road closures, schools across Northland have announced that they will not be opening tomorrow. This is still a case-by-case basis, but the key message for Northlanders tonight is to have a plan in place in case you need to evacuate and to avoid all non-essential travel.
Lauren Hendrickson, thanks for the update.
But it's further south on the Coromandel Peninsula where the worst of the storm is expected to hit. Authorities are already urging residents in some coastal communities to consider evacuating their homes by tonight. Our reporter Ashley Yates is there.
If this is the calm before the storm, no wonder officials are so concerned.
It is going to be very severe and very destructive.
A warning Whitianga residents aren't taking lightly.
A little bit of elbow grease, fill some bags and help protect the property a wee bit.
A property he's owned since 2009 and now it's in the firing line at Buffalo Beach.
We're just preparing to move stuff away from the front of the house where we believe it's going to really get thumped.
Across the road, these concrete blocks were lifted into place to protect this beachfront property after getting council consent. Its neighbour is the iconic Mercury Bay Boating Club, already on stilts due to last month's coastal erosion.
We put them on at 5 o'clock this morning to dissipate the pullback of the sand.
Whitianga looking less like a coastal holiday hotspot today and more like a ghost town.
There's a huge amount of people that have left and are obviously frightened, but it does discourage people from coming down.
8 areas in the Coromandel have been identified as being at risk, causing authorities to plead with these communities to consider evacuating by tonight, along with anyone living in a flood-prone property.
We're expecting many properties to suffer damage. We're talking about roofs getting lifted, fences and everything falling down.
We've got the Defence Forces in place. We've got roading crews out there ready to move. We've got our community groups in place ready to support people, our welfare agencies, our emergency services.
Make sure that you've got your grab and go kits. Make sure you know where you need to go in the event that you have to evacuate your homes.
The Whangamata Surf Lifesaving Club is also freeing up its IRBs to rescue people, not from the ocean, but from their homes.
Our search and rescue squads are here, they're ready to go, and just to respond to help the community with any flooding or damage, working with other agencies, so fire and emergency as well.
And while locals in Whangamata are keeping their spirits high,
we wondered if the cycling group were cycling today, but it doesn't look like they are.
They're taking precautions.
We're heading out because we don't know what the Karangahaki Gorge will be like, and it's the only way out of Whangamata with Highway 25A closed.
The weather is the wildest I've certainly seen it. I'm a little bit worried about the poor beachfront people because they've had a hard time of it to the last storm, and this one's looking a lot worse.
With the worst yet to come.
Ashley joins us now. Ashley, an emergency alert has also been issued to those in the Coromandel.
Yes, that's correct, Laura. That alert came through roughly 2 hours ago, advising people that Cyclone Gabriella is likely to arrive on the Coromandel Peninsula overnight. However, the effects are starting to be felt here. This rain is starting to get very intense. It's hitting so hard it stings, while the wind is really starting to pick up here. That rain is meant to be expected to bring up to 400 millimetres of rain and severe gusts reaching up to 130 kilometres per hour. That's why those red rain and wind gust warnings are in place until Tuesday. Authorities are saying don't be a hero, don't take risks and be safe.
Ashley Yates live from Whitianga, tēnā koe.
Cyclone Gabrielle continues to track towards the top of the North Island and is already bringing strong wind gusts and heavy rain to areas smashed by recent flooding. As we go to air tonight, this is where Cyclone Gabrielle is currently positioned in the Tasman Sea. Red warnings are now in place for severe downpours across the Coromandel Peninsula, Gisborne, north of Tolaga Bay, Auckland and Northland. And with the forecast rain, more warnings to brace for significant flooding and ongoing power outages. We've got reporters standing by with the latest on what's unfolding. First, here's Nicole Bremner's report on the impacts in Northland.
The far north are first to feel Gabrielle's fury, whipping up huge waves at the usually placid Karikari Peninsula. Gusts of up to 135 kilometres an hour battering homes and downing trees.
We have responded to a small number of 111 calls from people in Northland relating to wind damage that included helping evacuate a family after a fallen tree in their house, helping people tie down a caravan, and several calls to fallen trees and power lines on roads.
More than 8,000 households without power tonight, but that number's likely to rise.
Most of the outages we've seen now are about trees and because of trees. So if we see the wind pick up overnight, we'd expect to have more off. It could double or triple, we just don't know.
Northland schools are closed tomorrow, the full force of the cyclone yet to hit land. Civil Defence is warning residents to be vigilant.
There are some people in Northland that know that their homes or properties flood regularly. Some of them have probably already evacuated and done the right thing. For those that haven't, and they know that their homes could be under threat, they should take some steps now to leave.
The region's no stranger to extreme weather. The roof on this Pukenui home, yet another casualty. And nearby Hohore wharf's taken a hammering. While the region's main state highway is closed again, just days after reopening.
The most important thing when it comes to shops is keeping the Brenduins open. With the truck lines coming backwards and forwards from Auckland to Northland, that's how we keep supplies in.
Tonight, coastal residents are facing whatever comes as prepared as they can be.
You know how long it took me to get that lawn established?
All wondering what Gabrielle has in store when darkness sets in.
We'll bring in Nicole, who's in Whangarei. And Nicole, a major section of State Highway 1, it's closed yet again.
It has, Melissa. It's only been reopened a couple of days ago after sustaining very serious damage in the last storm, and you heard there just how important that roadway is to get supplies in and out. There is a lot of concern about the road. Waka Kotahi has been keeping a very close eye on it. They have been monitoring it and had a team on the road to ensure it's okay. But with these heavy red warnings in place, they say the risk of slips is just too great. So they've closed it overnight and it will undergo a thorough inspection in the morning to see whether or not it will reopen tomorrow.
Nicole, you mentioned in your story about power cuts, and locals are now being warned about more of them.
Well, unfortunately, this wind, which is just pretty solid, is only going to pick up and get worse overnight. The forecast is that it will strengthen. That means more trees will be blown over, and the bad news for people in their homes is that it's the downed trees that are causing all the damage and disconnecting power. Now, the local lines company has got a big team. They've got a full staff ready to go out and repair things once this wind dies down. It's far too dangerous for them to go out in this rain and in the wind. So until the wind settles, people are just going to hang tough and do without their power. And they are saying today that that could be 2 days, it could be slightly longer. So they are asking people to please just hunker down and be patient.
Kia ora, Nicole in Whangarei for us tonight.
Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thanks for joining us for our special Sunday update for February the 12th as we track Cyclone Gabrielle towards New Zealand. Overnight, the Met Service said that Gabrielle now has a bit of a new name. It is no longer going to be referred to as Tropical Cyclone Gabrielle, simply Cyclone Gabrielle. And that's because it is leaving the tropics, and like all cyclones that leave the tropics, they become extratropical. And in the past, that was sort of known as an ex-cyclone, which is perhaps not the best term because it sounds like it's all gone. But when it's extratropical, like it's going through now, that phase where it loses the tropical portion of it, the storm remains actually at the same power. It's still basically a Category 2 storm. And another thing that changes with this process is some of the peak winds in the middle, they can die out a little bit and fade down and spread out further, but then it can re-intensify, and suddenly that's what we're expecting on Tuesday morning, suddenly see those winds to ramp back up again. And the air pressure might even go lower than it's been over the past day, which is quite remarkable. So that's the reason why it is still very much a cyclone, and nothing's really changed other than the core of the storm has shifted from being tropical air to cold air. Now let me show you what that does. This is a wind map showing the current strong winds across Sunday afternoon. Centre of the storm is there, but the strongest winds are in the darker shading just to the northeast, and then the secondary sort of wave of wind ahead of it. Now in the tropics, the worst of the wind would be just around the middle portion. But as it gets extratropical, those strong winds, they fan out. Now the storm might, as I say, it might weaken just a little bit as it tracks down this way, but as it comes into the Auckland and Coromandel areas, it is expected to deepen. Just about every model says that. So that's the reason why we're watching this very carefully. You've got the wind here that is moving down the country because it's turning extra tropical and it's spreading out. But you've also got the centre which could deepen and another burst of wind with that as it comes in. So it's getting quite complicated. Take a look at these two models, UK on this side, America on this side. They are very aligned. You can see here it comes into the Auckland area and moves out. We'll show you that once more again because I want to show you where it ends because that's quite important. Now, the difference between the models, there isn't much. Maybe 100 kilometres. That's very normal with a tropical cyclone because they wobble. And I said yesterday, when it goes into that extra tropical phase, it gets a bit lopsided. And I think I said how it's like a duvet when you wash a duvet or a big blanket in the washing machine and it all lumps up on one side and the whole thing starts rattling the house. Well, you're kind of getting that happening here. It sort of wobbles a wee bit. The winds suddenly surge up on the other side. And that could be a problem when it comes back in on Tuesday. So this is Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when we think the centre of this storm will be coming in and will be deepening as it does so. Met Service are also saying exactly the same thing in their advice as well. Good to be on the same page as them. So you can sort of see why there are sort of two parts to the wind, one around the middle and the other one sort of pushing down the country. So let's take a look at the actual tracking. Here we are for this evening. It is still to the north. Now, it passed over Norfolk Island last night at about midnight, 1 in the morning. The air pressure dropped to 958 hectopascals. This one says 972. So as it goes through this process of becoming extra tropical, where it leaves the tropics and it gets cold air fueling it, no longer tropical air, the air pressure might go up a wee bit. But like I say, as it heads southwards, still 972 here for noon Monday, but as it heads southwards, you'll see that the rain is intensifying as the system comes down and the strong winds are moving down the country. And then by 4 o'clock in the morning, hard to read, but that says 963. And we've actually seen the Australian model picking 957 out near Waiheke Island. Great Barrier Island out here, further out near the Coromandel. So that means that Auckland does have the chance of having its lowest ever air pressure recording. NIWA this morning put out a great tweet. They did a bit of research and said that the record for Auckland was 970. And so this is looking likely to break the record, and I believe it was 962, or close to that, around Cape Reinga. So I'm not sure about if Cape Reinga will break the record, but certainly I think further down we're likely to see that. Now, the lower the air pressure, the more unstable it is, but also the more you've got the windy weather. So the deeper that gets, the more isobars you see. It's a bit like a topographical map. When you see all those lines bunched together, the gradient is steep. Another feature to notice here, as I said, there are two areas of wind. You've got the first lot moving down the country and the second lot right around the centre. That first set of wind down here, moving down, is likely to also be very windy in places that we don't normally talk about with a storm coming into the north of the country. So Manawatu, Kapiti Coast, over towards Taranaki, those easterlies are going to be very strong, gale force, and then you've got the rain pushing down the eastern side of the North Island as well. So there are a lot of moving parts to all of this. Just finally, wind map here at 4 o'clock in the morning. If you're colourblind, this area here is the most extreme wind, coming up and around like that. So it's an easterly for the lower part of the North Island, a southeasterly for Taranaki, and then it turns around as a southwesterly for Northland and northern parts of Auckland later on. There's the wind map, so you can certainly see that wind just being squeezed in there, and where all the wind meets, that's where the rain is going to be heavy. So we're seeing a lot of heavy rain down the eastern North Island, Coromandel, the eastern side of Northland and Auckland as well. You're talking 150 to 250 millimetres, and then in the hills and ranges it could be much higher than that. It might be 300, 400, 500 millimetres depending on how slow it all moves. So 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon looks as though it might be starting to weaken again a little bit, and that's good news as it moves further to the east. But look at the very strong winds, southerlies, southwesterlies, gale force, damaging winds, power cuts likely around parts of Northland and Auckland, and windy weather now moving down into the South Island, Canterbury. And the Kaikoura Ranges getting plenty of rain from this system as well. Dry parts of Canterbury will probably like getting some of that rain. Otago and Southland, you're not likely to get very much. A little bit maybe coming in for coastal Southland. You see here at lunchtime on Wednesday, The rain with a southwesterly is coming in there to Canterbury. The storm's moving out to sea. It is weakening still, but still 982 is pretty deep. It's still worthy of keeping a close eye on. But look at this, a clearance in the north and the winds, they start to ease back. That's the good news. And the Chatham Islands, yes, windy and wet, but really just another day in the office for them. I don't think it's going to be too extreme, although they might have some weather warnings issued there. And we get to Thursday. This is really showing a sign of maybe the chance of downpours, afternoon thunderstorms or afternoon showers around the North Island, still raining around the Kaikoura Ranges, and we've still got a few showers brushing parts of Otago. But if you take a look at our ruralweather.co.nz site, you'll see that the rainfall totals in the south there are not that great. Then we get into Friday. We've got low pressure here, that's the leftovers of it, falling away into the Southern Ocean. The Coriolis effect pulling it to the southeast and away from us, and then it disappears. I said in a tweet yesterday, I had to say something positive for you all. Here is some high pressure coming in. It's not very strong at 10:17, but it is moving through. Little smiley face there for you. And that is coming through hopefully next weekend. And also up in the tropics, not much going on. A few thunderstorms, a small area of low pressure there near Tonga, but hopefully that is not going to turn into anything else. So we've got a little bit of unsettled weather at the end of the week, but then things do start to ease. Now here's the latest Met Service map. Now this could have changed by the time you watch the video. Please do take a look at these warnings. If you live in the North Island, you must check these warnings because they are widespread, and you can see they've got the red alerts now coming up in certain areas, and it's pushing down into the South Island as well. You can find the warnings on our website, Weather Watch, and at Rural Weather. You can also find the warnings on our Weather Watch site under the Maps and Warnings area, but they should appear in your local forecasts as well. But you can look for them and go to the Met Service website, just metservice.com, if you need to find the warnings. If you can't, for some reason, find them on our site. So that's all from me for today. We'll be back again on Monday, hopefully. I say hopefully because we're not really sure what's going to be happening with the power and situations like that. We do have some backup plans, but then again, we might have issues, driving and things like that. So we're not too sure, but we've got a plan to do a video tomorrow. We are going to still be providing updates. We've got an office in the South Island as well, so we are going to keep going. But just letting you know, it's it's a little bit of a strange time. Not 100% sure exactly how the next day or two will go. But based on the current weather, hopefully not everyone will have damaging weather. That's one thing about our hills and ranges of New Zealand. Yes, it can make the wind and rain worse for some, can also shelter others as well. So we'll see how we go. It will make a lot more sense to people as well once it starts to actually show up on the rain radar. And if you're even still confused, try ruralweather.co.nz. You'll notice that the graphs and the wind maps there just give you sort of a good glance at when the peak weather might be. However, I have to say, it does sometimes underestimate